Good evening. Welcome to the West Fargo City Commission meeting, Monday, December 17th. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Thank you. First order of business is to approve the order of the agenda.
I move we approve it.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Yeah.
Commissioner Jurdevig. And moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the order of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next order is approval of minutes of December 3rd, 2018. They have been distributed for your review.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Jurdevig moves. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Thorstead. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approval of the minutes from December 13th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Building permits. The building permit report has been distributed. Are there any questions of planning and zoning?
I move we approve.
Moved by Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jurdevig. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permit report for 12/17/2018. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next order of business is the consent agenda. We have three items on the consent agenda. The gaming site authorization for the Fargo West Rotary. Games to be conducted are raffles on 5/11 at Harley-Davidson. Item B is the final plot approval of Sukit 5th Edition. Item C is final plot approval for Oak Ridge 15th Edition. Entertain a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Thorstead moves. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next order of business is the regular agenda. Review the concept plans for proposed Brooks Harbor 9th Edition replat and rezoning. Mr. Sober.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight before you is a concept review of the planned unit development of Brooks Harbor 9th Edition. Typically in a planned unit development, the development goes before a planning commission for concept review. If approved there, it would go back to the developer where they would develop detailed development plans. It would then again go through planning commission and then come before you for a zoning change, first reading and second reading, public hearing. Oftentimes though, when I have a subject that's a little bit controversial, I'll suggest to the developer that they bring before the commission the concept. Even though it was approved by planning commission, I think it is good for the commission to weigh in on such a subject if it's controversial. So tonight there's no public hearing scheduled. There is no action requested of you. However, typically what we've done is provided some direction to the developer so that when they go back to do detailed development plans, they don't put a tremendous amount of effort into developing engineered plans and building plans if it's simply not going to be approved. So in this case, I wanted to bring it before you because in the similar area, Brooks Harbor, there was a development at Highland Meadows that had some multifamily development in it, and that was denied by this commission. So in this case, the developer here is asking that a lot be turned from R1 zoning to both R1 SM for a small area of single-family development, and I'm going to pull it up for you to review as I'm going through it. Their first proposal was sort of this idea here, 3 apartments and this little row of single-family homes. This little row of single-family homes would be the R1 SM that they're proposing, and then the multifamily would be a PUD. in the PUD, it allows the commission the opportunity to provide higher design guidelines, different amenities, et cetera, that could provide a more unique option in this development. Planning Commission asked for a couple things when they reviewed it. They did approve it in concept, but asked that they, asked that they provide options within the multifamily portion of the project that would look at overall density, potential impact to the school, traffic concerns, and aesthetics to improve the compatibility in the neighborhood. So they went back and have this to provide for you, and I'm going to hopefully give Nate Volmuth an opportunity to talk about this a little bit more because it's his development. They've reduced the density of apartments and kind of talked about what the impact is in traffic and impact to the school. And then they also provided a example of what it would be if it were all single family. So currently it's zoned R1. What I explained to the Planning Commission is because it's zoned R1, there's no obligation to consider a zoning change legally. There's no reason that you have to provide them anything outside of what's already been approved there. So you really have some discretion here of what it might become. I'd kind of want to open it up to the applicant right now to explain what they're proposing to do, if that's okay with you, Your Honor. But I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Any commissioners have any questions of Mr. Solberg first?
So it's zoned for this right now, which is showing on the screen?
Yeah. They still would have to come in for a plat. It's just a one lot plat. So as part of the larger area plan for Brooks Harbor, this lot was initially gifted to a nonprofit, a church, and they didn't have a need for a church apparently, and now they're looking at redeveloping it, and so they sold it to the applicant to redevelop. So they have to plat it into those amount of lots, but that's...
Is it like the size of a city block, or how big an area are we actually looking at?
The area is here in the plan. It is 8.2 acres lot size. So.
Any additional questions for Mr. Solberg?
I just have one, Mayor. If Tim, if they were to stay as the housing, which is what we pretty much proposed, what would the lot sizes be? That's huge to me. Are we looking at the 40-foot wide, or are these going to have to be wider because they're right now the
minimum lot size requirement for a R1 zone lot is 50 feet wide.
Okay, so this isn't okay.
It'd be similar to the ones that are just to the west.
Yeah, yeah.
But there are some further south that are the R1SM, which are only 40.
The R1SM provides for a mix in different widths of lots. You can be as minimal width as 36 feet wide.
Okay.
With some conditions and how you can't have two 36-foot wides next to each other.
Okay, thank you.
One question, Tim, as pictured, is that a private drive they're proposing? Because we don't see sidewalks or anything put in there as that. And I don't know if that's the standard width of a street or if that's private drive.
This is a concept that looks like probably not, and I'd let Nate speak to that. It's probably proposed as a private street because we would require about a minimum of 62 feet of right-of-way, and that would be pretty hard to shoehorn that in there.
Additional questions? Please proceed.
Thank you, Commissioners. Nate Volmuth with Paces Lodging. Thanks for having me here today for the concept review. I do have, Tim, can I scroll through these?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do it. Okay. So we originally came to Planning Commission about a month and a half ago with this plan. I had met with the three of you prior to that on a concept that looked different than this. That had the apartments against 9th Street, and then had the R1SM kind of tucked up in the upper corner. And got comments on that from Bernie and Mark and Eric. And then I met with Tim and revised a little bit with some of the issues, some of the concerns that yourselves had and planning staff had. So we came back with this concept, which essentially provides a buffer from the single family with the R1SM to the apartments in the back. We had a good discussion at Planning Commission, and there was a good turnout with the neighbors. And there's 4 things that Tim just mentioned that kind of sent me back to the office with as things to try to improve upon, and that was density, style, creativity, impact to the school, and traffic concerns. So I made this is the one I want to talk about tonight, but I also did a concept of what is currently zoned, what we possibly could do there. I mean, I understand it's not platted this way, but there are other developments in West Fargo that are similar to this. So I did this just so that the City Commission and Planning and the concerned residents could understand what the impact could possibly be. So I kind of want to start with this and then show you what it is now or potentially could be and what we have proposed. So right now there's 76 single-family housing units here. Traffic counts, and Dustin actually talked about this at the Planning Commission meeting. Single-family homes have essentially 10 trips a day, so 10 car trips a day. Multifamily has 6. So right here in this concept, there's 760 trips to this development. And the public school enrollment, I found this, I didn't get it from Mark, but I actually found it from a national study that single-family homes produce 0.8 students per household, and multifamily housing produces 0.35. So this development would have 61 children essentially for the Brooks Harbor Elementary to the south. I'll skip over the one that I presented at planning, but this is the newer concept. It looks very similar to the previous one. We did reduce the density of the apartments. We pulled them off the street about another 50 feet to kind of give them some vegetative buffer. And here are the new counts for the this shows all the original ones. The traffic now with this count is 660, and from the existing zoning was 760. The traffic was 760 to 660 in this, and the student enrollment went from 61 to 41 in ours. So that spoke to two of the issues that the staff and the residents had was traffic, impact to school. The density we decreased by 9 units, which probably doesn't seem like a lot, and it doesn't maybe look a lot if you look at this plan, it's the next plan. And that's something that we can talk through additionally. And the style and creativity, from talking to Tim, would be our plan would be to do it through a set of PUD standards, so you could set the quality of the buildings ahead of time, so that you get your commission would have the ability to kind of justify what the facility would look like. So with that, I would appreciate your comments or hear any concerns or questions that you have for me.
Thank you, Nate. Gentlemen?
Nate, what would did you do the count? And I mean, I thought I saw it there, but if it were just all single family, how much traffic? Is that the 120?
760.
760, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm gonna have that map. So if you do the multifamily, then that doesn't, that's the enrollment, but the multifamily. In other words, what's the difference between if you do individual homes for traffic count compared to what you want to do?
Single family it's 760, multifamily goes down to 660. So it reduces
It reduces the traffic. The concept we're proposing reduces traffic and reduces student enrollment.
That's where I was kind of going,
Yep.
so it actually brings the traffic count down.
Correct.
Okay. Which I realize for people, it's hard to understand that,
Yep.
but
And
I know your figures.
I appreciate the question. The other part of it is that the R1SM homes here they're not necessarily restricted to retirement, but that is the concept that the developer builder is going towards. So I don't have the figure of what a retirement home produces for traffic as a standard home, but I would imagine that it's less trips per day as well. I don't have that shown on the figure, but.
So in this drawing, when you refer to them as retirement homes, they're on grade?
Correct.
No
Yep.
basements?
Slab on grade with a loft above I think they have a loft above the garage.
And what are you looking at for lot width?
These are probably, I don't have that on here. Those are probably 40 to 50s. On the previous slide, the one thing that I should mention is that the way that it's zoned right now, and Tim, you correct me if I'm wrong, the way it's zoned right now is R1. So if you have a single family home, it's 50, but if you have a twin home, it's only 35. So these are essentially shown as 35 to 36 foot lots.
Okay, so they're smaller lots.
Yeah.
Has anybody actually been out there to make a traffic count, or are you just using studies based on?
Just using the study, yep.
Hmm?
Just the study.
Just a study. So
Correct.
no one's actually ever been out there to make any car counts or anything like that?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. So the 706, to me, I live down Eagle Run.
Mm-hmm.
760 cars down my street in a day, I bet you there's that many in a week. I find that hard to believe,
Yep.
that there'd be that many cars in that area if there was that kind of design right there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see where that could possibly be that way.
And I don't know if there's any counts that the city has done in other developments that would show that at all or not, but maybe Dustin could speak to that.
And I'm only a couple blocks from Aurora, so I'm near a school.
Commissioner Olson, typically the rates they're using are developed from the Institute Traffic Engineers Trip Generation Manual. And when you start talking about trips for single-family household, it gets to be a little deceiving because you think, when you drive and leave to go to work, that's a trip. When you come home, it's a second trip. If your wife leaves and someone comes home for lunch, you get a UPS delivery truck, whatever it might be. So those trips start to aggregate after a while, but you don't get all those 760 trips at one shot all leaving.
Right.
So if you have in the morning, the rule of thumb is about 10%. So in the morning, you might have 76 cars come out of that development in the morning. So that's where these things start getting a little deceiving.
Mr. Scott, did you have something to add?
Oh, I think Chris covered that. The numbers that I provided during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting were, in fact, from the Institute of Traffic Engineers manual. So if someone were to do a traffic study out here, those are the numbers that they would input into a model that demonstrates how much traffic is coming or leaving particular site. And so, at this point, it's the best information that we have without doing a full-blown traffic count, traffic study.
I was just, with all the emails that we've received, there's a lot of traffic there already without more houses being put up there.
I would imagine, obviously, until they're built, you're not going to get a true accurate count anyway, so you kind of got to use what we have, I guess.
Mr. Thorson?
2 comments. Number one, I've opposed apartments here before, and I continue to be against apartments here. I think it's inconsistent with the development in that area. This would be, obviously stand out. There's no apartments within any blocks within that neighborhood. I think that number one. And number two, which we're going to be discussing here after a bit, is Cheyenne 32, which is not too far from here, is going to add, it said according to the report we got, over 200 estimated housing apartment units. I don't think we have any shortage in this area of apartment units for people that want to rent. And I don't think we need to put some at this location. There's lots of options. There's several large complexes down there right now with the big apartment complex and then all those townhome rentals kind of around the fire stations. So I just don't see the necessity to more apartments at this location, and I personally am gonna stick with this, zoning on this property and push for single-family dwellings.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else?
I'd like to say one thing, Commissioner Thorstad, and I haven't even made a decision on this yet, but it always puzzles me with the traffic, because if you can get less traffic by building something like this, which means less congestion, rather than more congestion. And again, I don't, I'm not an expert on that.
I think maybe we're all focusing too much on traffic. I think we have to look at the why of the neighborhood and making the properties available to the renting public, I guess you want to say in this case. And there's no shortage of options within this area for those people that want to live down in that area. And I just don't see it as a good fit in this particular location.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying that I think we do have to still count traffic, because it's so busy there now trying to get out on 26. So we have to look at traffic.
Well, no matter what goes in there, it's going to only make the traffic situation worse. And if you go by the school at 3:30, yeah, there's a lot of cars around that roundabout there and stop, picking up kids. But again, unless you stood out there and see what times people do their trips, whether it will affect it or won't affect it, like you say, you won't know until something's built. But
right.
Again, I look at the surrounding neighborhoods, and this would be, in my opinion, just the outlier. It would just, I don't personally see it fitting in that area.
Commissioner Drury.
Yeah, a slightly different thought, because I don't mind the design of it, but I think I would agree with you, Commissioner Thorstad, in the sense that, to me, to rezone something, your neighbors have a lot of input on that. A lot of people have bought houses and made big investments with an understanding of how something was zoned. And from my understanding, there's significant opposition within the neighbors around this property to the idea of rezoning, and I think that would be my deciding factor in opposition to it.
Can I add one question? Just because I talked to Mike about it quickly at the Planning Commission meeting, and I think Mark and Eric and I, and maybe Mayor Simmons, or Mayor Dardis spoke to it too. But if we were to restrict the apartments, which they're labeled now, to senior housing, would that change so that it was towards a specific demographic, would that change? Just if you could speak to it for just a second, so I could understand when I take it back, because that's an option. I know it was something that some of the commissioners said that would probably help on their decision, so if anyone would be able to speak to that, that'd be great.
I'll just kind of restate my point. The design of it, from an aesthetics perspective, isn't my issue. I think if the neighbors are to a very large degree opposed to the change in zoning, then I'm not going to support that personally.
Okay. If we were to go thank you, Mayor, if we were to go to a senior housing type of style, how would that change all the traffic and all that for these people? Because I agree with Eric on the neighborhood. There's a lot, they have a lot to say. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't know, are they telling us that they're against senior housing? Because we always need senior housing as well.
Yeah, and I don't have those counts. Obviously it would change the school enrollment. It would change the traffic counts, I would imagine, dramatically, but I don't have that. It would just be, yeah, you understand, it'd be, if it's an option, and I appreciate what Eric said about the zoning and the opposition. I don't know, this isn't a public hearing, but to be able to understand if that would be an option for the residents, that would be helpful too. But I'd like to, obviously, I want to know your thoughts before we even.
Talking about senior housing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are you still talking about one of these concepts here?
Correct. We would just essentially, I'm just proposing this as a thought, but instead of these being market rate apartments, these would be senior housing apartments. And then this would be marketed to senior housing 55 plus retirement. So it would be drastically less, zero impact on the school and drastically less traffic concerns.
What was the gravy in there then?
What's that?
The gray.
This year?
Yeah.
This is parking and garages, so
And
that would be reduced
so
too,
what you're
because
saying
they don't have as much.
So you're saying is you're willing to turn all that area into senior housing, if that would work?
Correct.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep. It's just an idea, because I can kind of feel the commission's standpoint on it, so instead of going back and talking to Tim and having him ask the question, I'm just asking the question ahead of time.
Honestly, and this is my opinion, but what I would encourage you to do, and Tim, is, I love PUDs. I know developers don't, but they're good for the neighborhoods. They're good for the citizens that live out there because they have a little say, Nate, in this. I would suggest having another public meeting where you could get together, or a private meeting out in that area with these citizens to talk to them about senior housing, because we always need senior housing. That's a huge theme for us. We've come a long ways in the last 15 years, but we still need more. There's a lot of older people that want to move back. I think that would be great if the neighborhood could adapt to that and work with it. I think that would be my next move rather than come and asking us right now for a decision. Honestly, that's my opinion.
Anyone else?
Just for clarity, are you saying we're just going to designate these apartment buildings for seniors? And
Correct.
How would we ever enforce that long term? I mean, you
Well,
can say
it could
that
have to
now
be-
and a year from now saying, well, gee, I couldn't get enough seniors to move in there, so I'm
Yeah.
opening it up to the general public.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it would be how you do that, if it would be through the PUD writing, or if it would be some other agreement that we would have to have with the city, I would imagine.
That's why a PUD would work well for something like that.
Yeah.
We have agreements now, Commissioner Thorstad, with the areas.
And I agree that the need for senior housing is good, but a lot of the projects that have been built in town have been the single low rise, and that would be very congruent again with the neighborhood. But if you're saying I'm gonna build a 3-story apartment building and I'll call it senior housing,
Right.
boy, if that doesn't work out, I guess I'm gonna put whomever I want in there.
I agree. I'm just throwing out an option, just rather than nothing.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an option with the neighbors to do something, or otherwise it's gonna sit again and you're gonna sell and we're gonna go through this process.
Yep.
Personally, I like Commissioner Simmons' suggestion regarding, more public input from the neighborhood and the community. I'm going to break protocol here for a little bit. Nate, why don't you have a chair?
Yep.
How many people in the room here are with us this evening that are from this neighborhood and have concern? Would two of you please come to the podium? Any two? Now, this is not a public hearing, just so everybody understands that. But if you people are investing this much time to come and be a part of this discussion, I feel compelled that, yeah. So the latest part of our conversation was about senior housing. The amenities of the apartment buildings would be virtually the same, that would look the same. Could you share your thoughts with us on that, or any other thoughts that you do have? And I need your name and address too, please.
My name is Sarah Griesbach. I live at 606 23rd Avenue West. And personally, I mean, we're looking at slab-on-grade houses. Couldn't the current zoning stay the way it is, and those could be offered as slab-on-grade houses geared towards senior living? Kind of like by Walmart off 45th. Right behind there's a big wall, and then there's a lot of condos that are kind of geared more towards seniors. And why couldn't it just stay zoned the way it is? I don't understand why it would have to be 3 levels for a senior to get up to their home unless you have an elevator, and there are issues. That's personally how I feel about the senior living part.
Thank you, Sarah.
Jason Toso, 702 23rd Avenue West. I'd have to concur with Commissioner Thorstad in terms of just the overall feel of the entire neighborhood there. I think the third one, and you mind if I scroll down? I think this one, in conjunction with their want to develop the area, I think this one bodes well, better with the community, better with traffic. If you take note of where the in and out routes are here and here, our points of congestion are around here, because this is the entry to the school. Part of the reason for the traffic for the school is the fact that the West Fargo Public Schools has the bus rule, which There's very few children for this K through 5 school that actually get bused, so there is a large volume of traffic there. There's also a large volume of walkers, of small children walking there, so that's where the primary concern for the traffic comes from the citizens and what we see. It's our children walking there, so. But not trying to be completely negative to the developer, this one does bode well better, keeps them out of the area in this area as opposed to here. This is right at that congested area. And again, with Commissioner Thorstad, I would agree that the apartments do just change the landscape of it, and if they are zoned for senior living and then built, they will look like apartments. And if they're not filled with enough seniors, then they will be back here wanting to rezone it to get some additional people there. I think with this layout that the developer could definitely look at some of those single level, more senior orientated homes and get quite a few of those properties within this type of configuration. So, yep.
Sarah?
Sorry to interrupt. Also, with this layout, I don't know, I've lived in apartments in the last couple of years, and generally a lot of people have garages full of stuff, so generally a lot of people can't fit their car in their garage, and with this layout there are 66 spaces in front of these apartments for 90 units, so even if one apartment unit has 2 cars, or they can only fit 1 car in their spot, you still have 66 spaces. And I know for a fact, had there been a church, there would have been an agreement with the school for overflow parking on Sundays and Wednesdays, or for a large funeral. So my concern is if there's overflow parking for the apartments, what's going to happen? Who's responsible? Who's liable? Is the school liable if people start parking in the school lot and there are school functions, or if one gets snowed in over the winter? As if you've driven by apartments in general, the adjacent streets are full of cars as well because the lot gets full. And along these streets, there's no parking allowed.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jason, both for your comments. Appreciate it. Nate, response?
I understand what the neighbors' concerns. I mean, I don't completely understand, but I understand that why they would have concerns. The problem, part of the problem is that no matter what goes here, it's not going to be an open grass field in the future. So that's why I brought the slides in, to speak to the fact that if I could come in and zone it tomorrow, what it's actually zoned, I'm going to be causing more traffic issues and more students to go to the school. And those are two of the biggest arguments at the Planning Commission. So I'm just, I respect the fact that that there are concerns, but like a lot of developments, you're not going to make everybody happy. And I just want, it's not going to stay as a green field, so sooner or later somebody's probably going to be unhappy. The only other comment I have, and this, I don't want it to come off, I'm not sure how it's going to come off, but I'm going to say it either way. The one concern I do have, and I think I've spoken with it, with Tim and possibly the city administrator, but is the fact that we didn't propose the other developments to the north that had the senior housing or the multifamily housing, but I believe that at some concept those were approved at Planning Commission, and then they came to City Commission and failed. And the same thing happened with this. We took it to Planning Commission and it was approved 7-0, and we come to City and it fails. So I just bring that as a concern that there's a drastic disconnect between Planning and City Commission, and if it's like an unneeded process to go to the Planning Commission unless everyone comes together to have the same vision for the city. So I just bring that up as a closing statement. Thank you.
It's a valid point for you to bring up in discussion. Yep.
Speak to that,
yes, please.
Mr. President. Thank you.
Our
Planning Commission recognizes that there is a change in that, or a difference of opinion, and I would respectfully disagree with that that's a problem. I think that that's okay. Our Planning Commission is built to deal with facts, and the facts of the matter in this case, from their perspective, was that transportation and school enrollment was not as much of an issue. But the policy decision on changing zoning and the neighborhood feel, et cetera, that Commissioner Thorstad talked about, they felt that's a city commission decision, and they don't want to delve into the political aspects of that. So I'll stand up and stick up for our planning commission that they did their job. They stuck to the facts. So.
Thank you, Mr. Sobert. Any other comments?
I do.
Mr. Simmons.
Tim, I totally agree with you. You're absolutely right on that. You know, you guys are the experts, but at the end of the day, we are the policymakers, and we're the ones that have to live with these neighbors that come in front of us all the time. And rarely, I mean, usually things work well, but there have been times when neighbors come and say they don't like it. In all honesty, you know, Eric is right, and Commissioner Thorstad is right. I mean, you know, those people, we have to go with them too. Yeah, we have to listen to the people that voted us into office. So
that's your job.
That's my job.
And then along with that, I want to commend you, Nate, for your bringing forward the three concepts. I mean, the city of West Fargo wants to work with developers in any shape and manner that we can within the city ordinances and planning and zoning ordinances that we do have, and to follow through with our comprehensive plan that we've developed. And so, but we do, all of us up here understand the investment that is in that property and what's involved. And we, West Fargo has been the benefactor of great development and great growth, and we're very respectful of that to the developers that bring that forth to our community. So we appreciate that you continue to try and work with us. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to the next regular agenda item, which is item number 2, is review the final agreement for Cheyenne 32 development. Mr. Matt Marshall.
Thank you, Commission President Dardis and Commission. If you mind, I'll get my presentation rolling here. Good evening. What we're here to talk about is the completion of the Cheyenne 32 TIF district. So I want to start with a brief history on how we got from there to here. We have a couple of new members, and we're going between commissions. So what we're doing tonight is we're amending. We have a current agreement with the Southern Development Group that's already in place, rolling. They've got a building underground. And what we're doing is we're completing the whole TIF district to include the North Development Group. When the former commission put this parcel of property into a TIF district, the South Development Group was further along in their plans and processes, and so the former commission felt, okay, let's get into an agreement with the South Development Group and the North Development Group. As they develop their plans, it's appropriate for them to come in either under a separate agreement or combine the two. When they started to finish up, our city attorney said, it makes more sense to combine the two into one agreement rather than have two separate ones. And so that's what we're doing is completing off the original agreement with the north side. We started this conversation in July of 2016. If you can't remember, what ended up happening was the school district came in and purchased a corner lot that had been targeted for development, and the city had lots of requests to turn it into residential, and the city commission felt like, no, maintaining this commercial tax base is really important to the community. And so when the school bought it, there was sort of a general feeling of, geez, there goes a large parcel that will never pay taxes because it's part of a public property. The schools were great. They identified that, hey, they probably don't need all the land that they have, and so they worked with the city commission and the city staff, and were able to redesign their site to move the rink out of the way to allow for some development. At the same time, our comp planning process was going on, and the direction of the comp plan was, and has been adopted today, hey, we need mixed use, we need higher densities to help subsidize our residential properties, and we want to create unique spaces. That's what we're hearing from the community. And this area was targeted as a redevelopment spot, or one of those opportunities to create a unique space. With that, the city commission, former city commission, worked with not only the schools but the city and a development group and created a TIF district which encompasses both a north and a south development group. So the location again is on the corner of Cheyenne Street and 32nd Avenue. The two parcels that are in the TIF district today are the south parcel, which is those south blocks there in yellow. Let me get a pointer here. Down here, that's where we have a current agreement standing today. They're actually starting that building already right now. And what we're talking about is adding in this top block. Again, during the comp planning process and in the current adopted West Fargo 2.0 comp plan, we've identified this area as a possible unique space where we should focus on high-density mixed use that interlates commercial and residential living and somehow create it unique. That was through public participation. And here are the conceptual renderings that the comp plan artists had put forth as possible ideas of what we could do on that corner. Not quite sure where the lake comes from, but that's all what they were talking about. So what does the south development look like today? The south development, this is the unique space, the public plaza. This is the parking ramp area, and this is the south development's commitment to build these 4 buildings right here. Again, this east building is under construction today. You can see the footings coming out of the ground. This is a rendering of the proposed ramp. And I say proposed because in this melding of agreements, we're actually proposing to add an additional level to the ramp, which the north developer would then access at different times. The total parking spaces, 404 parking spaces, so 4 levels, about 100 spaces per floor, and the price per stall is $18,564. Interestingly enough, the more you build, the cheaper they are, and we learned that going through the process, which way it makes sense to have the north developer take advantage of that south side. So these are some renderings of the south side, and again, I'm going to focus on this just to bring everybody up to speed. This is a rendering of the east building. There's 2 levels of commercial and 3 levels of living on top. So retail on the bottom, commercial office on the second floor, and then living on top of that. This is a rendering of, the south development. You can see the hockey rink in the background there that was slid out of the way. These are the buildings and how they interact. There's not a parking ramp in the structure, so you can see what's going on in that plaza. Another Cheyenne 32. This is a ground level view of the plaza. So the north developer has come to the point now where they're ready. They've got preliminary drawings. They're working on their side of it. So Eagle Ridge, which would be the north developer, also is proposing a mixed-use building. And it encompasses the entirety of the north side. So unlike the south developer, they're going to come out of the ground with one giant building at one time, which is good because it launches all the taxable value right out of the ground right now. The capital investment in the building is between 32 and 35 million. When both of these projects are done, there will be over $88 million in private investment. This is important to us because it's extremely high taxes per square foot. And again, if you go back to the comp plan and look at some of the goals, and as we create these unique spaces, that's one of the areas of focus that they wanted us to look at. The buildings will have over 130,000 of commercial space and over 250 living units between the 2 developments. So a dense little area down there. So how would we allocate the north parcel's TIF dollars? And to go back and talk a little bit about the TIF district, the way a TIF district works is that the developer is going to pay taxes just like everybody else. There's not going to be an abatement here. They'll pay special assessments just like everybody else. There's no abatement on those two things. The current value of the land that's out there today is locked in place. So none of the political subdivisions like schools, city, will go backward in budgets. What you collect today is what you're going to collect tomorrow. What we are doing is we're saying the additional tax dollars that they're building in buildings, we are going to take that money and we are going to provide public amenities, parking ramp and Central Plaza Square. So it goes, and that's for the common good. We want all the general public to show up and use that Central Square that's designed for events, and we want people to use the parking ramp when there's lots of hockey going on or there's an event at the plaza. The reason for the ramp is that, in order to get all of this done on a small space is that we need to explore non-traditional parking needs. And I call it non-traditional because in West Fargo, we typically have the flat parking. So, if you have a big event in the plaza or you have, a bunch of people come to this commercial property, we need a spot for them to go, and that's where this ramp comes in on both developments. So on the north side, they're going to have $6 million in cost. The first $1.5 million is going to go to an additional floor on the parking ramp. So our original agreement is for the 3 floors. We're saying let's add an additional floor. We get that at a better price because once you drive pilings and get the foundation in, it's actually cheaper to go up. The second is dedicated to the plaza. They have to dedicate $1.5 million to the plaza. And then the third is to help them with their infrastructure and land costs so that they can also put a parking structure into their interact in their building. And that part is so that they also can build an incredibly dense development and stack stuff on top of each other, which pushes the normal construction costs pretty high. And it gets us what we want with that higher density development. The nice thing about that is that parking structure will be fully taxable and added in as value. So what are they proposing? Again, one giant structure that will come out of the ground, 5 stories. This is a at-grade parking structure. On top, they would build levels of housing, commercial development all along the front of Cheyenne Street, and living on top of that. Here are some proposed elevations. There's actually 2 proposals. This is a retail front elevation, and then here's an updated retail front elevation as well. So in all, what happens when this is all done? As I mentioned, $88 million in private development. The TIF would support the parking structure in the city plaza. And again, this is where they're paying their taxes. We're not going backward in taxable value that's there today. It's just the additional taxable value. We are then going to take that additional money and then pay for the public amenities that we're putting out there. The way this will happen, there's some reimbursement discussion in there. We're leveraging the private to developer to finance the amenities in the front end. And the reason that is that that's their responsibility to keep costs, so we've capped them at a cost that they cannot exceed. So that's a protection mechanism for the city. If some reason that the ramp now is $9 million, our commitment's $7.5 million. That's it. The same goes to the plaza as well, and that's where you see those redisbursement numbers. The other thing is that forces them to get their taxable value out of the ground first before we come in and bond and allow their taxable value to pay back the bonds. And again, this is something that their taxable value will pay back the bonds. It's not, the city at large by any means. It's just consistent with that advice. So again, the developer will borrow to construct the parking structure, and the city will use the developer taxes to repay the debt once built. And then the developer will have to first build before the city will approve the parking structure. So as you can see, there are buildings coming out of the ground, and the first building's under construction. I put together a spreadsheet just showing the overall TIF district. In your memo, there's the north side, but I thought, well, let's talk about the whole thing just so that everybody knows. And keep in mind, we have an agreement for the south side already. But again, the total taxable value that the development's going to generate is $88 million. The new taxable value is $1.2 million. If the city chooses to bond for that debt, which I'm assuming they will, once the amenities are in place and once we have the taxable value in place, the cost to bond for that debt, and it's gotten really small, so I'm going to have to go to my page. My apologies. There we go. $1.92 million. And that's using a 5.5% interest rate. We believe we're going to get a smaller interest rate than that, but I wanted to be conservative. A lot of this is public infrastructure bonds, so we get a better taxable rate on that. In addition, their taxable value is likely to be much, much higher. I typically back that off, so if they give me a number of $60 million, I give them credit for 55. And I try and be very conservative because rates can fluctuate. All of these bonds are backed by special assessments. So if their buildings don't generate the amount needed for some reason, we tack it on as a special assessment so the city's maintained. We also have letters of credit in place, and we also have requirements that they have to have a certain amount of taxable value built before we enter into the equation to ensure that we're covered. And so, again, this is really leveraging their tax dollars that they're paying to put in public stuff. And with that, we have representatives of both development groups here in case there's additional questions, and I'm here as well. So.
I have a question for person.
Go ahead. Who's going to actually own and control the parking structure?
Oh, thank you very much. So the parking structure will technically be owned by the city of West Fargo, and that's partially for bonding reasons, so it can be a public amenity. However, in the agreement, it's the requirement of the developer to maintain the daily operations of that parking ramp, and so they have to pay for the daily maintenance and the daily operations. Now, if at some point there will need to be like a deck redone on there we have a right to, special assess it back to the property, the benefiting properties, because that's going to require a big thing. But that should be 25 years or 30 years. So.
Regarding the bonding, say you want to bond for the complete project. Well, it's not going to all be done at one time and ready to go out and get a bond. Are we going to have multiple bonds, or how are we going to handle the interim financing?
Yeah, so that part I'm leaving up to my esteemed boss / but we have talked about it. There are a couple opportunities. So the financial wizardry over there. Yeah. So there are a couple opportunities. First of all, we have an economic development sales tax you could leverage in the interim. There'll probably be 2 bonds because you have some public infrastructure. It'd probably be better to bond for that separately than the infrastructure for the north development. And to your point, it might come in at different times. So it might be a couple of different bonds, and it might be you use the economic development sales tax for a period of time, or leverage some of those funds available. So Tina has been on top of that. I'd invite her to answer if you want to go in, or if you have a particular direction that you'd like the most. I'm sure everybody's open.
You stated the north building is one complex, so they'll go up at one time. Do you have a rough idea? I know they're building one building there now on Cheyenne, the lights or whatever it's called, Cheyenne 32.
Yep.
Are the other buildings coming soon?
Yes.
Or are they going to be spread out? I mean, that's the only thing is I think, your equations are all based on it's done, one thing, and here's what we can afford and finance based on full taxable value.
Right.
Well, that isn't going to happen all at once.
And that's the beauty of having them finance it in the front, because then that gives us the opportunity to incentivize them. So building 1's coming out of the ground, building 2, they have tenants locked in. That's coming out of the ground in the springtime. And then building 3 is shortly thereafter. So, and again, we have in the agreement, the public plaza can't start until building 2 is under construction. So building 1, parking ramp, building 2, then they can start the plaza so that building 3 can catch up right in the end. So that all sort of shows up. I know that the north developer is planning on starting next summer, and that's going to come blasting out of the ground, like I said, as one giant build. I'm assuming that will take a year. So you're correct. And again,
As long as you have a plan to, unless you borrow some money from Brad, but we need to be able to pay for that in the interim until we've got that full value there to support the bonds on the TIF.
Right.
The initial thoughts were looking at the timeline, we'll make the determination, does the city have enough funds on hand to carry the project a little longer, or do we do 2 separate bonds because there's extra bond costs? So it would kind of be a financial decision we'd be working on once we have more data. But either way, we'll be able to.
Thanks. So the parking ramp and the north building of the south development is all going to be built basically at the same time?
Yes, again, see, I'm confusing myself.
Well, you've got buildings 1, 2, and 3 that are right in front of the existing hockey arena.
Right.
And the parking ramp's going to be kind of behind the north building, the 4th building that's there?
Let me go back to the site plan just to make sure I'm tracking.
Right there, right there.
Yes, so the north development's actually up here.
Great. But the parking ramp's down south, right
Correct.
there.
Correct. And in their agreement, they have 105 dedicated spots they get to use. And so it's a public ramp, and we consider this a dynamic parking situation. It's something that, Tim and I have been working on. So the south development will utilize the ramp during the day, but then they've provided underground parking for all of their tenants, residential tenants upstairs, so they won't be using the parking ramp at night. 1 floor of the ramp will be used by the north developer at night, but then during the day, that 1 floor will be open for people visiting the plaza or the park. And
when do you see the ramp coming out of the ground and being built?
In our current agreement, this group can start the ramp once they get footings and foundations out of the ground. And the reason that is they need this parking to support any tenant that would come in. And so that's how that works.
Matt, I think some of the questions or the point is we already had an agreement with the ramp with the first building going up.
Yep.
And all we're really doing now is adding that 2nd floor to the north and. The agreement's already, so the original process was the minute the south building goes up, the ramp starts to be built. And then we're just adding to that tonight because of the north decided to come along and do another fantastic project actually to get this even going more.
Right.
So the end result I think is by next summer we're going to be really rock and roll and having an awesome setup out there for everybody, for all of our citizens to see. Right, Todd?
Yep. And this is a little.
We probably would if that's okay, Mayor.
Yeah, and again, before he gives us that, what's unique about this is that, in certain TIF districts like Butler's, for example, a lot of times we leverage the tax dollars to get infrastructure in that sort of benefit the commercial properties adjacent to incentivize development. In this TIF district, we're taking the taxable value to build public stuff. And so it's a nuanced difference, but in my opinion, it's a large one because the developers, they do benefit from having that activity in and around, but really they're public spaces that we're building with the money. And we're leveraging that to create those unique and different spaces that our comp plan calls for. So kind of creative financing, and they're willing to come along for the ride, so that's good for us.
Hi, thanks. Todd Burning.
Mr. Burning.
This building here, as Matt said, it's out of the ground. Steel will be going up here in January, precast on top of that. That's a 5-story building. That's tracking just fine. The south building, you can see there's a drive-through on the main floor, and the main floor is going to be 80% the bank that we're working with. And actually, part of our entire agreement with that bank is to be out of the ground in May. That's going to be a 6-story building, pushing the limits on soil, et cetera, so it's kind of interesting. This will be done next fall, this will be done next fall, and this will be right behind it. So all this stuff is going to come online, and this will come right around a year later, so it'll be called May or June of 2020. So by 2020, you're going to have a very usable product for the community. And the West, I always told Matt, I said, well, you know, if things work out, you know, hopefully we'll get it done someday and we'll just plant grass there, but actually we have a whole bunch of interest in that building. That's going to come right behind it. We have not really gotten into this building yet, but clearly the West one here will be right behind this. If it's not next fall, it'll be the spring after. We just have a lot of interest in the site and in the amenity that we're putting together as a team. Any other questions?
Any questions, Todd? Share with us a little more, Matt, on reimbursement for improvements. That's section 9, page 15 and 16.
Certainly. So as I mentioned, the developer is responsible for financing the ramp. And actually they've worked through the Bank of North Dakota, and Bank of North Dakota is working with a local bank, Blackridge Bank, because frankly financing a parking ramp is hard. You know, how do you appraise a parking ramp, for example? And so really, as I mentioned before, we have capped, you know, the amount of money that the TIF dollars can go to support. And so, you know, they have put forth the money. They have 99% design. They're actually out for bids right now, getting them in. Once building 1 comes out of the ground and building number, or in the ramp is done, then that's when the city decides, do we want to use economic development sales tax and start leveraging their taxes to pay us back, or do you want a bond right away for the ramp? That's really up to the city administrator and you guys at that point. And so we have options, I guess, is the good part right now, and we'll have to just see where the timing is. As Todd mentioned, you know, building 2 will be out of the ground. You may want to wait and see where that's at and where the completion of the plaza is going to be. Again, if at any time these the taxes don't cover the bonds, we have in here, just like all of our TIF districts, this doesn't get spread amongst the rest of the taxpayers. They come in as a special assessment, and so we'll leverage their taxes. Did I answer the?
For this property only.
Correct. Yep. Well, and the north property for their portion. So.
How about the reimbursement dollar amounts for 1 and 2? 7 million and 3 million.
So for the ramp itself, are you asking just how we came up with those dollar amounts, or?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a 90% bid. So again, it's a 404 spaces at $18,000 and some change. That's how that price came up. When we were first meeting with Walker Parking, which is who we've used to go through the design. They're a parking ramp designer out of the Twin Cities. They do hundreds of them across the country and the world. You know, originally estimates, they came in at like $22,000 a parking stall. Now, again, with the additional floor, it seems like it's right at that $18,000. Any additional money that, you know, so let's say this thing comes in at not 7.5 million, but 6.5 million. That money will then go into the plaza as, you know, buying additional amenities in there. It's in everybody's best interest, us, developer, everyone else, to get the bonds paid off and get everything up and functioning as fast as possible. So that's how that works. And then, I'm sorry, I missed your second part of your question. You asked about the $3 million. So the $3 million in infrastructure, the North developer has to have $14 million in his building before we'll release those funds. So that and then the other $3 million that's dedicated by the North developer for the, we'll call it the South amenities, are backed by a letter of credit. And so if for some reason we can pull that letter of credit if we need it to pay for the amenities, and then on the North side, we want to make sure that they have enough taxable value in to cover that $3 million where the bank's fully committed and the developer's fully committed. So within that, $6 million has to be from the bank so that they're fully invested in the project. And again, if there's ever a shortfall, whoever owns the property, which is the bank, is also responsible for the special assessments, which would cover us a third time. We've got great attorneys, as it turns out. They build in layers upon layers of safety.
But we are reimbursing the developer real dollars at the end of this project to the tune of $10 million. And we own the lots, public amenities, and the parking ramp.
Correct.
This is for transparency for the public. That's the only reason. I'm not challenging that agreement or anything like that. I just want the public to understand that.
Correct.
If they've not had the opportunity to read it. Because it's $10 million of taxpayer dollars.
Correct.
And are those $10 million being generated by this project? Is that coming from this TIF district?
Correct.
It's not coming from
Correct.
outside the district?
We have the potential to special assess if we have to, but yes, Mike, but that's how I understand it.
Just for clarity for the public again, is they're generating the taxes that are paying to that $10 million. It's not coming from anyone outside that district.
Let me go back. So we're just to make sure for transparency for everybody, the dollar amount is $16 million. There's 10 on the south, 6 on the north. The amendment is for the 6 on the north. And to your point, all generated within that TIF district, not generated from anywhere else. And when the special assessments come for deficiencies, would be from those benefiting properties.
Clarification. Paragraph D on page 16.
Let me catch up to you.
Is it $6 million or is it $3 million?
I apologize, Mayor. Will you tell me?
Page 16, paragraph D. I'm looking at the Mr. Shockley's document. You're looking at a different one.
So application of funds, section 13, is that what you're talking about?
Obviously, we have the newest.
Let me just check yours if you don't.
We have the newest agreement that was handed out this evening. It's a 6 on the top. Just that clarification is what I'm looking for now.
So they have to have $6 million invested into the
$14 million project.
Sorry, the project itself is $33 million. They have to have at least 14 in the project, and we want at least 6 of that to come from the lending institution. Again, we want the lending institution fully invested. We want the development group fully invested before we'll release those funds. And that's sort of the backstop through our attorneys. I said, once the lending institution starts lending, they have their own process where they manage the construction project, especially in developments of that size. So, a developer, they don't just hand the money over and say, okay, here's $33 million, good luck, let us know if there's a problem. The banks always hire an independent review to ensure every time there's a draw request, that independent review goes and looks and says, okay, they actually built what they said they were going to build, this is an appropriate building, and we'll release the funds. We want them well along in that process, make sure everything's going well, and then we say, okay, here's the $3 million for your infrastructure. Keep on it going. That's why it says $6 million and 3. They get $3 million once they have 6 from them, and $14 million all invested.
Matt, again, I think the number's kind of funky because we've already approved a majority of this, so we're just adding on that second floor. Is that?
No, thank you, Commissioner Simmons. In that paragraph, we're specifically talking about the north development.
About the north.
The mayor is correct there. Or, sorry, Commission President is correct there. And so what we're saying is that, again, they have to have $14 million invested, at least 6 from the lender.
Just a question for curiosity. In the TIF district, I understand it's frozen at the pre-improvement value, you know, as far as taxation, but does the value of that property go up, or is that frozen after completion as well, in as much as taxable valuation over a 25-year span of the TIF district?
So Century Code is not entirely clear, and I've actually talked to our assessor. Our city policy has been, we do allow it to go up as property values increase as well. And so we typically just use the structure and say that's what you're rating. If there's increases in the land value itself, that'll get increased to the taxable.
But the structures will stay the same.
Right.
For 25 years until the TIF.
No, frankly, a lot of times the structures also increase in value, so that pays the bonds faster.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Is I know you freeze the land value at what it is, or the taxable valuation right now.
Yep.
But
I'm
the
sorry.
can the improvements, you know, accelerate valuation
Yes.
with inflation?
Yes. In our downtown TIF district's a great example of that. You know, they came in, the likelihood that that building would build is going to stay at that level for 10 years is virtually none, because we're going to go in and increase the taxable value on those properties. And so what happens in those cases is, yes, we receive more money than goes right into the bonds and then pays them off quicker. The hard part about TIF districts sometimes is if you put a bunch of infrastructure in and buildings don't go, like if you do an industrial TIF district, sometimes that's where you can say, okay, we're sitting on stuff. But in this case, where everything's launching out of the ground, you can kind of count on the fact that they're going to increase in value. And, you know, it's probably safe to say that this one will get paid off a little earlier. I can't guarantee it, but the reality is once they're up, once they start appreciating value and we start increasing the valuations, as we know everybody in West Fargo loves, it'll go a little faster.
Well, the other benefit, this has a fair amount of commercial space, which should generate
Correct.
sales tax. It's not just an office building either, so
Yep.
you know, that's a positive as well.
Yep, the bottom floors dedicated to retail type space will generate sales tax as well. And the upper floors could, but those are geared a little more toward commercial office. The current tenants, which I can't release yet, are more, you know, doctor's office type, clinic type setting up there.
Anything additional from that, Mr. Marshall? Excuse me.
Is this a action item?
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir.
I will be approved. Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Simmons, moved by Commissioner Olson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Marshall. Next order of business is the review example scope of service and feasibility study discussion for the West Fargo Convention Center. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you again, Commission President Darvis and Commission. I'd like to review and discuss the West Fargo Convention Center that's been discussed now a couple of times, and sort of bring the current request to you. I provided a memo that outlined how we got from the beginning conversations all the way to where we are today. That's in your packet for review. I also provided an example scope of services. And what that is I've called around and said, you know, what is a feasibility cost? I've said many times I'm not an expert in this field, so I just want to ensure that what I'm asking for is feasible, or I'm asking the right questions and we'll get the right questions. And so I worked with a group and they were generous enough to get an example scope of service in writing that we could review and then draft an RFP off of. The convention center, which you could also call an expo center, again is designed to be more of an expo center trade show hall located on the fairgrounds. The city at one point was working on, you know, can we get a draft agreement in place to sort of move this conversation along somehow? And it became clear that none of us knew enough about expo centers, convention centers to continue a draft agreement or anything else until we had somebody say, will this work? Is there a market for it? Is it designed correctly? How much does a facility like this cost? And in fact, Commissioner Thorstad brought up a great point saying, you know, we'd love to see community engagement, which I completely agree with. It's hard to have community engagement when they might ask relevant questions I don't have answers to. So the request today is to review the scope of services, and I'm asking if I could send out an RFP and get responses back for a feasibility study to then bring to you to get approved. I have approached the Convention and Visitors Bureau. They've committed $30,000 to a feasibility study, or up to 1/3. Of course, the fair would be a partner with us, and we could have other funding sources as well come up. But what I'd like to do is at least send the RFP out and get that response back, work with the fair, CVB, and then get that information. The CVB's requirement within their $30,000 was we had to send an RFP out, and so we would of course follow that step. With that, I'm open to any questions. I can go into the whole history if anyone here would like it, but it's been pretty well discussed. I would also point out that in the from the very beginning, one of the reasons we're looking into this is in our comprehensive plan. It named one of the things to study within our comprehensive plan, the feasibility, and so we're just trying to get to that step, the feasibility of this. You know, can we build it? Is it a good idea or not?
Matt, I think one of the last times the old commissioner, Thorstad, you remember it was, we brought this forward to do this, and there was a lot of confusion at the time, and the information we sent out wasn't perhaps correct. All we had wanted at that time was a feasibility study. That's it. Nothing saying we're moving forward with anything.
Correct.
We just want to see if it works. And we talk about 2.5 years, and I think it's been 3 years we've been working on this project.
Yep.
And so I think we need to make it very clear tonight. The citizens are going to ask you about this, that this is just a feasibility study. We just want to do a study to get the smart people telling us if it will work or not. We're not going to build anything at this point. So I think that needs to be pretty clear.
I have a question. Can we enter into any kind of a feasibility study on land that's not in the city limits?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I've never heard that red flag, but I appreciate the question. So
it's not in our limits, so why are we looking at it? I mean, it's like, can we actually spend money on a study that's not within our city limits?
That's a good question.
Yeah, good question. Yes, we can.
But we are partnering with the owners of that property as well, so.
And hypothetically speaking, if the commission went forward and they got to the end and said, yes, build this thing, the amenity would be within city limits at that point in time, because part of the overarching agreement would be that they would have to come in to the city of West Fargo. Again, that's a ways off. I think the Red River Valley Fair is looking for final clarification. And again, we want to send out the RFP to see what the responses we get back. find out the funding. Again, we've got the Convention and Visitors Bureau that have committed, as long as we send out an RFP, they're open to 30% or $30,000. And then bring that back and say, okay, here are our responses, here's the scope that they have, here's the plan, what do you think? And see what we can, see what we find out.
But at this point, we're just asking for a price quote and
correct,
more or less. So, you know, and I concur with what Commissioner Simmons said. It'd be nice to have more information on it. One thing is I want to make sure is we don't, in our request for an RFP, is don't narrow our focus. I think they need to look at it in a broader sense and maybe a different purpose. And like we say, we think convention center, we think place where you have just trade, you know, straight trade shows and, you know, certain type of amenities. Again, personally, I think it's going to be more of an exposition type center, which is different than the traditional convention center. And particularly with the Fargo, you know, discussion going forward for those type of facilities at the Fargo Dome.
I would agree with that. So a mistake that I personally made early on in this discussion, and it shows my ignorance in the topic, is just labeled it convention center because I didn't know the difference. And frankly, we stuck with that name primarily because we didn't want confusion. Is there two centers, an expo center and a convention center? And so within this RFP process, with your permission, maybe I would rename it the West Fargo Expo Center or something that seems more appropriate. But as we talk about it and as you analyze it, you compare it to the Fargo proposal, they are two vastly different facilities. And that's another reason why it needs to be studied, frankly. You know, it's a different market, different revenue, different possibilities, and so, and I'm not I can't be that person to say this is a good idea or not. We need someone who's way more qualified in that area.
One of the things, Mike, we had that conversation, and the one thing that concerned me was, like Matt said, at this point, not to necessarily change the name, because it probably never should have been a convention center. But I think if we start, you know, like Matt, slowly throwing in expo and stuff, because if we all of a sudden change it, I'm thinking the citizens are going to think, oh, they're trying to pull a quick one on us here, and we don't want that.
I'm just saying, if we're going to ask experts to give us their opinion, I want them not to be a narrow focus and say, convention center will never fly here, when there's maybe another product that might work. So we just don't want to have them focused, you know, have a narrow focus. And I say, I want a broader focus if we do it. And at this point, he's just asking to go and get a quote. He's not asking to commit to any dollars. And so
Yep, and that was a requirement to the CVB's money, which I don't see why we wouldn't take advantage of if you choose to move forward. And so that step in the process, you know, I think has to happen. And so, again, today is just, hey, you know, I'd like to send out this RFP. Are you okay with that? We'll get the responses, and then it'll be back for your consideration again.
You know,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, I think studying it makes sense. The only question I have is whether, you know, West Fargo, you know, whether the city should be the lead entity in putting out this RFP, or whether that should be the Red River Valley Fairgrounds.
Right.
I'm fine as a participant in it. I'm just not sure which one might make more sense.
Well, and that said, I know Brian is here with Red River Valley Fair. I'm sure I'll let him speak to that, but I don't know if there'd be an issue with him leading that charge.
Mr. Schultz, we'd welcome you to the podium if you'd like.
I think one thing, Matt, we have to be aware of is that when we get to that point, there would be an annexation process, and it would ultimately be, you know, the city property as well. So I would think the city's definitely got to have involvement in it.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
and I'm not saying not involvement. I'm just, you know, this frames it up that we are taking the lead in doing that study. And I'm not sure whether, you know, I see us as a participant in the conversation. I'm not sure we're the ones that are taking the lead with it. And I guess that's the only question I have.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my whole part on this is, at this point in time, we have spent 3 years on this. To change the whole focus on it, I think, is going to add even more time on it. And, I mean, I don't see where it would make a difference who's going to take the lead on it. Matt has done all the work already. For us to go back and start over and do it, I think it's gonna take even more time. So it's gonna come down to, it's gonna be a project that the city's gonna be involved with, or if they're not gonna be involved with, I think we need to have that answer today, that we don't wanna move forward with it, and then we just button this up and not do anything with it. 3 years has been a long time. We've gone through a lot of meetings, and I think to change it up and have the fair take it and run with it is gonna even take more time. And like I said, Matt has put in a lot of time and effort into it, and has got an RFP of sorts put together already.
And I think, short term, I think that's a great point. I think, if this actually gets past a study, then I think it's a much more involved conversation as to who's taking the lead with the project, from my perspective.
Let's just get the study done, folks. Let's get the study done.
Oh, let's ask for a quote.
Well, right, I get that. Let's ask for that.
We've already got a rough idea of what it's gonna cost. That's obviously where Matt came up with, about $90,000. But as a stipulation from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, they wanted to send it out as an RFP.
I think that's the first step, and I'm probably very fine with the second step too, as long as the RFPs come back within what we're anticipating or hoping for.
One thing, Matt, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is a good time to do it, because I'm a little bit concerned with the CVB, which they went out to do that, which was very gracious and we needed that, and I was with you at that meeting. I thank them very much, but I think we as a commission also have to be somewhat prepared tonight to understand that if it comes back at that 90,000, like Mr. Schultz says, we have to be prepared, willing to spend that money, that 1/3 or whatever it is. We have to acknowledge that tonight, I believe. I know you kind of wanted to jump over that a little bit, but the truth be told, we need to make some type of a commitment, because the CVB did, and they're not even part of this.
Yeah, the CVB's comment was, we'd like it to be an RFP. The example scope that I have has, first of all, has 2 phases. So you could get through phase 1, and all groups could say, yeah, not for us. And that phase is $60,000, and choose not to even go into the second phase. And so the costs vary, and the CVB said, geez, what if you send out an RFP in the 2 phases instead of $90,000 come back at 70? We want to know what that is.
Matt, and I agree, but I would like to maybe change it a little up tonight and make this into an action item, where we would say, at least so it gets out that to say you're right, we need to do that. Absolutely, and that's the first priority, but I think the city has to show that we're willing to at least support it with some funds, so kind of do it like the CVB did. Take a motion to say we'll pay 1/3 of up to this amount. If it comes back, we agree upon the price. At least we're showing the CVB and the Fair Board that we're willing to put some skin in the game, right? We're not just going to wait. I mean, I just want to make sure that we don't insult the CVB or the Fair. I think we owe it to say there's some amount of money, 1/3, whatever, that we're going to.
Absolutely.
I would, excuse me a moment, I'd like to defer to legal counsel. In our agenda, it isn't advertised as such. Is that all right? We proceed with that?
I think it's related enough.
Okay, thank you.
Again, Commission President, is that a request I make, or is it a motion?
I will make the motion and the request. If that.
Yeah, I guess I apologize at this. I'm a little out of sorts. I just want to do it right.
You're doing just fine.
You're doing fine, no.
Mr. Marshall, no problem. And I respect what Mr. Schultz has had to say, and so Commissioner Simmons has made the motion to approve sending out an RFP with regard to the feasibility study of the facility in question, Expo or Convention Center. Is there a second?
Does your motion include a commitment as
Yes,
well?
it does. It makes it up to probably the $30,000, just like the CVB. If it should be that much, but write it the same way. If it doesn't, it's not. Great, good for us. That would be my motion. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Okay.
No.
No? I'm sorry.
For only this purpose, Commissioner Simmons, I don't mean to be.
You know the rules, I know.
I don't mean to be flippant. So if the RFP comes in at $65,000, we're committing a dollar amount. So then
No, sorry, man, we're not. We're committing 1/3 up to that amount. Not
to exceed 30,000.
Not to exceed 30,000.
All right, my apologies.
Am I wrong in doing that, Mayor?
No, you're fine.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't want to commit 30,000. Up to, though.
Very good. All right.
I put you on the spot.
Who's my second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Thorstead. It's been moved and seconded that we move forward with the RFP for the West Fargo Convention Center / Expo Center. Is there any further discussion?
Just the comment again is we're getting information. This is not a goal. This is not a item that's being done. Again, we're gathering the information we need to make a informed decision.
I would also assume that once the RFP comes back, and again, I'll defer to legal counsel, it would go forward for final commission approval as well, right?
Yep, I just
even though there are funds committed.
All I'm saying is we need to show good faith with them, but it still have to come back here.
Yeah, I just clarify.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next order of business. Mrs. Fisk, City Administrator's Report.
Oh,
it's all right.
Good evening, Commission President and Commissioners. There's just a few things I'm going to explain to you tonight or remind you of tonight, and then I will have a presentation here. I just have to get to my right spot. Hold on a second. Okay. The first thing I want to talk about is the legislative forum that we had this morning with the City of Fargo was a great success. I want to thank all the staff that worked so hard to get the project out. I know Melissa was instrumental and many others, and I want to thank you for that, getting information together. But I also want to give a thank you to President Dardis because he did a great job leading the meeting with the City of Fargo and pulling everybody together. Commissioner Jervig was there as well. So it went really well. I know Fargo was pleased. We were all pleased, and the legislators were very pleased with the way they said we should take that show on the road is what they said. So I asked Bruce how he's going to put that one in a cart and take it on the road. He wasn't sure yet, so he'll work on it. The next thing I have is a reminder, tomorrow night from 5 to 6:30, we have the West Fargo holiday celebration. There will be a tree lighting, and there will be crafts from the West Fargo Public Library, Costco, Moore Engineering, among those for the kids. West Fargo High School carolers will sing. There will be Cocoa with the Cop, tours of the West Fargo Police Department, and Santa Claus will be there, so you can get your picture taken. Santa, all of you. The next item is the special assessment forum dates. There is one date that has been changed. The initial date of December 10th? 20th. I was like, that's past. Okay, December 20th has been changed to January 28th. There just wasn't enough time with the legislative forum and all the things going on to pull all that together. And so the dates are January 3rd at the Hubert Aquatic Center, January 10th, the Flame of Faith United Methodist Church, January 14th, Legacy Elementary School, January 17th, Eventide at Cheyenne Crossings, and the final one, January 28th, Brooks Harbor Elementary School. All of these are available on our website, but I know Melissa's been sending out information. If you want us to send you meeting invites or reminders of any of them, let us know and we can help you with that. The other item that Melissa asked me to let you know about, she's been working really hard on letters, media blitz, and social media work for the sanitation rate changes along with the new calendars coming out and everything. So with that information put together, it looks very nice. She's closing that up and I think got that out today? This week. It'll go out this week to get printed and prepared. The next item is January 10th will be the Chamber State of the Cities. This one will have a little different format. There will not be little movie presentations or anything. There'll be more discussions, a little bit of PowerPoint, that type of thing. But as the information comes out on that, if you're interested in attending, please let us know and I can have Courtney help me get you signed up. Question for you, February 18th would be a normal commission day, but that is President's Day. Commissioner Jarabig reminded us of that and Martin Luther King Day, and I told him we don't get Martin Luther King Day off. So that will still be a commission meeting unless you want to move that. But February 18th, President's Day, normally we would move it to that Tuesday. Are you in favor of moving it to the 19th?
I'm fine.
Okay, all right. And last but not least, probably the most important, and I'm extremely excited about, I would like to welcome Jim Larson, who will start December 31st at the City of West Fargo as our new Finance Director. I would invite him up here to meet you. We will be bringing him around, letting you have time to speak with him, talk to him, learn some of his history, what he brings to the table. He's got a wealth of knowledge, a lot of experience. We got him from Fargo Parks, so that was nice. And so we're all really excited. I've heard a lot of good things, and I will have him come up here to say hello to you.
Thank you, President Gardis and Commissioners, for the opportunity to come here and to meet with you and to be invited and welcomed here. I look forward to this. I see the projects that are on the screens tonight, TIF districts, the new development, and these are things that I have familiarity with, so I look forward to the opportunity to be able to come and join a great team. I've heard a lot about, the fastest growing city. I mean, we're over in Fargo trying to keep up and we can't, so got to join the team then, and really looking forward to that. So as Tina said, I will be here December 31st. I actually feel a little guilty because I'll be also on vacation at the Park District, but for timing of everything, it works best. And I am truly excited to get started and to join this community. So any questions at all? Or?
No. Welcome. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. I have to say that since the announcement is made that you're joining us, I have had numerous people in city government in Fargo and people that have worked with you over the years, and they are so complimentary, and that the fact that you're joining our community as our finance director, we're very, very pleased. Your experience and your reputation is stellar, so thank you. Good to have you with us.
Okay, I need to plead ignorance here. I just got reminded by staff, we don't get President's Day off. I thought we did. So we can just keep the meeting on the 18th if you're all okay with that. Sorry about that. I can't keep them straight.
How about New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve, we don't have, we actually changed our ordinance so that we don't have a meeting on the 5th Monday of the month unless you guys choose to have one. So we don't have to deal with the New Year's Eve one. Just a little heads up, another reminder. I thought it'd be kind of fun to have you try and find us, but a lot of people are going to be moving around in an effort to get the finance staff more centrally located. Planning staff will be coming out of the planning area, and finance staff will be moving into that planning area, along with communications staff will be back in the planning area. And then everybody will go down the hallway down from Dustin, and everyone will be hopping around. You won't be moved, Bernie. We're moving John again, though. It's just for fun.
I didn't even know where it was anyway.
So we bought John a red stapler for Christmas, so we thought it would be kind of appropriate. But anyway, so if you're looking for us, you can't find us, ask somebody, or, just kind of wander, yell their name. So just heads up. And Merry Christmas to all of you. Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Thank you. I too have to speak to the help that the staff gave this morning with regard to the legislative forum. Exemplary. Thank you so very much that you make me look coachable. So I'm very grateful, Melissa, particularly. Thank you. Great job. Is there anything else for the good of the order from any of the commissioners? Well, as we get ready to break for Christmas, I want to wish each and every one of you a Merry Christmas and safe travels for those of you that are traveling. Is there a motion to adjourn? Come on, Commissioner Simmons, you always do that.
So moved.
Second. Commissioner Jurdovic. It's been moved by Commissioner Simmons that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Want to get out of here, Simmons. Here we go.